Saturday, August 10th, 2019, and this is the Pro and the Con Show. My name is Michael James Ott. Reality is, this is actually a makeup show from Saturday. I was traveling and had a little bit of trouble doing the show on Saturday, so here it is in full disclosure. Anyway, so the 10th Pro and Con Show, putting this message out there into the internet, hoping that eventually more and more people will watch and and be somewhat inspired, I hope, to be better citizens, to get more involved with their neighbors and better understand the issues and be open to at least understanding the opposing views, because that's how we stop being ignorant of some of the facts in regard to some of these issues. And so today's show, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a fellow. His name is Bill Maher, and he has a show called Real Time on HBO. I think it's on Friday nights, not every single night, but a lot of Friday nights anyway. And so he's a comedian, and he goes through, and his show is mostly politically oriented. And he talks about a lot of different stuff, obviously, and he has the guests, and some of them are presidential candidates or representatives or authors of books, and on and on and on. And he has it's a good show. He's pretty funny, and he's I would call him a very astute observer of the human condition in many ways. And so just to give you a feel for a few of those things, and again, trying to encourage dialogue, right? So he mentioned he had, I can't remember which Democratic representative it was. I think it was a Democratic representative. It might have been a senator. But anyway, it was a member of Congress, and he was a Democrat. And Bill Maher had him on his show, and he's like, I give you a lot of kudos because you go on Fox News and you talk about, even though the audience on Fox News generally is, doesn't like liberals and so on, you go on there, and by doing that, you're, sharing information. You're, and this is the whole point. This is one of the point. Facebook Live just died on me for some reason. Well, this is the whole point behind, my doing this show, is to try to encourage a dialogue, to get us away from this, constant butting of heads. Mostly, we're being led into this by our political parties. Okay, so, this is the show, and I'm sure there's lots of other people around the country and around the world who are actually encourage people to do the same thing. So Mr. Maher, encouraged, and he said this, on the program, and sure enough, several Democratic candidates for president, for example, started appearing on Fox News and in the various programs there. And it was actually well received by the studio audience, and encouraging, I think, for me and hopefully for you, that this dialogue can continue, right? We can keep sharing information, and sometimes we're going to have opposing views, but I swear to you, a lot of that is just based on ignorance, and ignorance is not a bad word. Ignorant just means that you don't know, and I don't know. I'm far from all-knowing. Would never profess to be all-knowing. So I'm definitely ignorant, right? And we all are. And very few of us would ever claim that we weren't. Although there's one or two of us that would, obviously. Anyway, so that was one of the things that Bill Maher did on his show that I thought was a very positive thing. Another thing that he did is this past Friday, he was talking about how it's okay for politicians, or for any of us really, to to evolve our views. And so, for example, Mr. Biden, back in the day, he had this certain views about these laws around punishment for criminal, and they passed these laws, and the whole idea back in the day was, I think it was back during the Clinton administration, the whole idea back in the day was that if we make the laws tougher, or the punishments tougher for breaking laws, that would indeed deter people from breaking the law. And unfortunately, what it ended up doing is, because there was like this 3 strikes and out kind of thing, some people who were actually committing minor infractions against the law because they were doing it multiple times, and in particular, people, for example, using drugs. It was against the law to use drugs, and they would get caught because they're addicted. They would get caught using drugs some number of times, and off to jail they go. And who does that hurt? Well, that hurts some of the most impoverished people in the country, because one, they're more prone to try to resolve their issues, or at least escape from, I guess, their issues by using drugs. And then secondly, they can't really afford good attorneys and stuff to try to get them out of these jail sentences. So the bottom line was that a lot of poor people, and by extension, because unfortunately the way minorities have been treated in this country over time, they've been persecuted to some extent. Some number of these people, and a disproportionate fraction were minorities, so African Americans or Hispanics and so on. So now Biden is saying he doesn't want to, that wasn't a good idea. But what he's saying is that he refuses to acknowledge that that was the situation, and now he's changed his mind. And Bill Maher talked about Barack Obama, and he showed a little clip where they were asking Obama about his stance on gay marriage. And Mr. Obama said, that his position on gay marriage had evolved, that he had a position in the past, and now that he had learned, become more acquainted with the issues and the people involved and so on, he had changed his viewpoints. And in fact, gay marriage is now widely legal in this country, where just some years ago it was widely illegal. And I'm sure there's still a percentage of the population that doesn't like that, but that percentage gets smaller and smaller every day, because we're evolving, we're becoming more sophisticated. Just like in the Constitution of the United States, it talks about, at least the first versions of the Constitution, talked about free people, and how you counted up the number of people, and people that weren't free people were, basically the slaves were counted in a smaller ratio than the actual people, as far as assessing for census and that kind of stuff. And another thing is, women couldn't vote. Okay, which and again, I'm sure there's a tiny percentage of Americans that still believe women shouldn't be able to vote, but that percentage gets smaller each and every day, and for good reason, obviously. But if you look at some decades ago versus now, yeah, women should be allowed to vote, and that's kind of commonly accepted these days, and rightly so, again. And so Bill Maher, his whole point was, yes, we change. Our society is changing. We're evolving in how we perceive these things, and that's right and appropriate to do. And so I've actually got the headline this thing, and I call it Mindful Maher, because Bill Maher, one of the best things of his program, there's some funny things on there, and he'll have this section called New Rules. It's kind of toward the end of his program, and he has some funny stuff, and then almost always at the end he will pick a topic and he'll go into some depth on it, and he's like I say, he's pretty astute and really makes some comments that are very much worth considering. Yeah, I mean they're reasoned and make sense in many cases. So kudos to Mr. Bill Maher. All right, so that's today's show, the Pro and Con Show. I'm Michael James Ott. This is the makeup show for Saturday, August 10th. Until the next show, bye for now.